The early months of 1942 were dark days for American naval aviation. The Imperial Japanese Navy ruled the skies across the Pacific. American pilots, flying the F-4F Wildcat, struggled against the nimble Mitsubishi A6M2 Zero. Losses mounted, morale faltered, and the myth of the Zero's invincibility grew. Amid the chaos, fortune intervened in the most unlikely of places, the Aleutian Islands. On June 4, 1942, a Japanese Zero, flown by a young pilot, experienced mechanical failure during a raid. The aircraft crashed on Akutan Island, a remote and icy wasteland. Miraculously, the pilot did not survive, but the aircraft itself remained largely intact. The Zero's fragile fuselage, wings, and engine were preserved almost perfectly by the marshy terrain. American salvage crews faced a daunting task. Braving freezing waters and treacherous terrain, they worked tirelessly to recover the aircraft. Every bolt, every control surface, every instrument was catalogued. The operation was risky, and the men knew the value of what they were retrieving. This was no ordinary aircraft. This was the key to understanding the enemy's greatest fighter. The Zero, now nicknamed the Akutan Zero, was carefully transported to Naval Air Station North Island in California. There, Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders, a meticulous test pilot, prepared to fly it for the first time. Sanders' mission was clear: determine the aircraft's capabilities, expose its weaknesses, and provide data that could save American lives in combat. As Sanders taxied the aircraft onto the runway, few could imagine the significance of this moment. The Zero, once feared as unstoppable, was about to reveal its secrets. Every flight, every maneuver, every stress test would contribute to a growing body of intelligence that would change the course of the Pacific War. By August 1942, Sanders' first test flights were complete. Observations were precise, technical, and methodical. The Zero, while superior in agility and climb, showed critical vulnerabilities: its inability to roll at high speed, engine instability under negative acceleration, and fragile construction that could ignite under fire. The mystique of invincibility was shattered. This knowledge was revolutionary. For the first time, American pilots had concrete information on how to fight the Zero. They no longer relied on luck or guesswork. They could strategize, exploit weaknesses, and fight with confidence. The Akutan Zero had transformed from a captured wreck into the blueprint for tactical victory. By the end of 1942, Sanders' findings were integrated into tactical manuals, briefings, and pilot training programs. The insights gained from the Akutan Zero would directly inform the development of a new fighter, one designed to dominate the skies over the Pacific, the F6F Hellcat. Testing and tactical lessons. With the Akutan Zero secured and transported to the continental United States, Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders began a meticulous program of flight testing. Every instrument, every control, every maneuver was analyzed. Sanders understood that this aircraft was more than just a captured enemy plane. It was a key to rewriting the rules of air combat in the Pacific. The first flights revealed the Zero's remarkable strengths. Its agility, especially in tight turns, and its impressive climb rate were unlike anything American pilots had faced. The aircraft's lightweight construction gave it unparalleled maneuverability. But Sanders also observed critical weaknesses. At high speed, the Zero struggled to roll quickly. Its engine, finely tuned for lightweight performance, could falter under negative G-forces, and even minor damage to its structure could ignite the fuel system. These insights were groundbreaking. For the first time, American pilots could approach engagements with a plan, understanding exactly where the Zero could be outmaneuvered or overpowered. Sanders documented every detail in exhaustive reports. Flight characteristics, performance limits, and vulnerabilities were carefully recorded, forming a blueprint for American tactical adaptation. One of the key lessons from Sanders' tests reinforced the value of teamwork. The Thatch Weave, developed earlier by Lieutenant Commander John Thatch, was a defensive tactic designed to counter more agile opponents. Two aircraft would fly in a coordinated pattern, weaving back and forth. If an enemy pursued one Hellcat, it would be exposed to the guns of its wingmen. The captured Zero validated the effectiveness of this tactic. Sanders' data confirmed that speed and firepower could be used to neutralize the Zero's turning advantage. The practical application of these lessons quickly reached operational squadrons. American pilots were trained to avoid slow, tight dogfights unless they had a clear altitude or numerical advantage. Instead, doctrine emphasized high-speed slashing attacks. Dive from above, fire a precise burst, then zoom back to altitude before the Zero could respond. Every engagement became about controlling the terms of battle. Speed, altitude, and firepower were leveraged systematically against the Japanese fighter. The intelligence from the Akutan Zero also influenced design decisions for the next generation of American naval fighters. Engineers at Grumman, already working on the F6F Hellcat, were able to refine the aircraft's structure, armament, and pilot ergonomics. Visibility from the cockpit was enhanced to ensure pilots could track enemies in all directions. Reinforcements to armor and firepower were made to exploit the Zero's fragility. Every adjustment in the Hellcat's design reflected the lessons learned from Sanders' flights. By early 1943, these tactical innovations were being tested in the field. Pilots entered combat equipped with new knowledge. The Zero was fast, but it could be outsmarted. It was agile, but it had limits. And it was deadly, but it was no longer invincible. Confidence replaced fear, and American pilots began to achieve victories that were once unimaginable. The combination of captured intelligence, tactical innovation, and aircraft design created a perfect storm. Sanders' meticulous testing had turned a single enemy fighter into a tool that would save countless American lives and shift the balance of air power in the Pacific. The lessons learned from the Akutan Zero would echo through every carrier deck, every air mission, and every dogfight for the next 2 years, culminating in a fighter that would dominate the skies, the F6F Hellcat. The F6F Hellcat, design, production, and early combat. By mid-1942, Grumman engineers had already begun work on a fighter that would surpass the capabilities of any aircraft the U.S. Navy had fielded to that point. The F6F Hellcat was conceived not just as a machine of war, but as a weapon designed to give pilots an overwhelming advantage in every phase of combat. Its development coincided with the arrival of the Akutan Zero intelligence, allowing engineers to refine the aircraft using knowledge from the captured Japanese fighter. The Hellcat's design focused on 5 key principles: firepower, protection, performance, ease of handling, and pilot visibility. Unlike its predecessor, the F4F Wildcat, the F6F featured a robust airframe capable of absorbing significant damage. Its Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine produced 2,000 horsepower, giving the Hellcat superior speed and climb rate. With 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns mounted in the wings, it could deliver devastating firepower. Crucially, the cockpit was elevated and designed for maximum visibility, addressing the lessons from early carrier battles where pilots struggled to see the enemy. One of the most revolutionary aspects of the Hellcat was its simplicity in flight. Grumman engineers intentionally designed the aircraft to be forgiving. Carrier landings, the most hazardous aspect of naval aviation, were made manageable through a combination of responsive controls, durable landing gear, and excellent pilot sidelines. The F6F was stable and predictable, allowing inexperienced pilots, fresh from flight school, to step into the cockpit and immediately be combat ready. Production ramped up at unprecedented speed. Grumman built an entirely new facility at Bethpage, New York, dedicated to F6F assembly. At peak production in 1944, the factory produced 1 Hellcat every hour, an industrial feat unmatched in American history. Each aircraft comprised 20,000 individual parts sourced from hundreds of subcontractors. The engine alone was assembled across 3 separate facilities before being installed. Jake Swerble, Grumman's production genius, orchestrated this enormous operation with precision, ensuring that the Navy received a constant stream of Hellcats ready for combat. The first operational Hellcats reached the fleet in early 1943. Fighting Squadron 9, aboard the carrier Essex, received the first aircraft in February, and the pilot's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. After struggling against the nimble Japanese Zeros and F4F Wildcats, the F6F felt like a quantum leap in capability. It climbed faster, carried more firepower, had superior speed, and offered cockpit visibility that allowed pilots to maintain situational awareness in the most chaotic air battles. The Hellcat's combat debut came on August 31, 1943, during a carrier raid on Marcus Island. Two squadrons, VF-5 and VF-9, launched from Yorktown and Independence. Japanese forces were caught by surprise. No enemy fighters managed to intercept effectively, and several were destroyed on the ground. Only 2 Hellcats were lost to anti-aircraft fire. In the months that followed, the F6F proved its dominance repeatedly. Over the Gilbert Islands, at Tarawa, Hellcats engaged veteran Japanese pilots flying Zeros and emerged victorious, often with minimal losses. Tactical doctrine, informed by Sanders' Akutan Zero testing, became standard. Pilots avoided turning fights that played to the Zero's strengths. Instead, they employed high-speed slashing attacks, dive from altitude, fire a controlled burst, and zoom away to reset for another pass. The thatch weave ensured mutual support, neutralizing the Japanese fighters' maneuverability advantage. In every engagement, the F6F could dictate the terms of battle. By early 1944, the Hellcat had become the standard fighter on American fleet carriers, gradually replacing the F4F Wildcat on larger ships while escort carriers continued to operate Wildcats. The aircraft's performance, combined with tactical doctrine and pilot training, transformed American naval aviation. Pilots now faced Japanese aircraft with confidence, knowing that the F6F's speed, firepower, and durability gave them the upper hand in nearly every engagement. The Hellcat at war, battles, kill ratios, and psychological dominance. By late 1943, the F6F Hellcat was no longer just a new fighter, it had become the spearhead of American naval aviation. Its combination of speed, firepower, durability, and ease of handling allowed relatively inexperienced pilots to achieve victories that would have been unthinkable in the F4F Wildcat. The first major test came over the Gilbert Islands on November 23, 1943, during the invasion of Tarawa. 30 Japanese Zeros rose to intercept American strike groups, many piloted by seasoned veterans. The ensuing dogfight showcased the Hellcat's design and doctrine perfectly. American pilots flew high-speed diving attacks, coordinated through thatch-weave tactics, which ensured that any Zero pursuing one Hellcat would face concentrated fire from another. When the smoke cleared, 30 Japanese fighters had been destroyed, while the Americans lost just a single F6F. This engagement demonstrated the lethal synergy of superior aircraft, carefully developed tactics, and rigorous pilot training. The Hellcat's dominance became even more pronounced in 1944. By the time of the Philippine Sea engagement on June 19, the largest carrier battle since Midway, the Japanese launched wave after wave of aircraft to attack American invasion forces in the Mariana Islands. They faced 15 American carriers armed with Hellcats on combat air patrol, ready to intercept. The result was a one-sided massacre, later dubbed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Japanese strike waves suffered catastrophic losses. Of the 370 aircraft launched, only 130 returned. The F6F pilots, operating in coordinated CAP formations, exploited every advantage. Their aircraft's climb rate allowed them to intercept at optimal altitude, their speed let them disengage or chase fleeing planes, and their firepower ensured devastating results in head-on engagements. American losses were minimal, only 23 to 30 aircraft, with most pilots rescued. This battle underscored not just technological superiority, but also psychological dominance. Japanese pilots increasingly avoided combat, diving away or disappearing into clouds rather than face the Hellcats. By mid-1944, the aura of Zero invincibility had been shattered. Early in the war, American pilots had fled from Zeros whenever possible. By the summer of 1944, the tables had turned. The same Japanese pilots were now retreating from American fighters. The statistics speak for themselves. F6F Hellcats destroyed 5,223 enemy aircraft across all theaters, with only 270 lost in air-to-air combat. Against Japanese Zeros specifically, the kill-to-loss ratio was an astonishing 13-1. The Hellcat produced more aces than any other Allied aircraft, with between 305 and 307 Navy pilots achieving ace status flying the type. Commander David McCulley, the Navy's top Hellcat ace, scored all 34 of his victories in F6Fs. The captured Akutan Zero had been crucial in achieving these results. Pilots were trained to exploit weaknesses discovered by Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders' test flights: inability to roll at high speed, engine cutouts under negative GS, and structural fragility. By understanding the Zero's vulnerabilities, American pilots flew with confidence, striking decisively and avoiding situations that favored their opponent. Hellcats were also adapted for specialized roles. Night fighter variants, equipped with radar pods, intercepted Japanese night raids, while photographic reconnaissance models replaced guns with cameras to capture vital intelligence. Later, F6Fs were modified to carry bombs and rockets, providing close air support with unprecedented accuracy. Across the Pacific, the Hellcat became a versatile instrument of war, capable of air superiority, ground attack, and reconnaissance, all while maintaining the highest kill ratios of any Allied fighter. By the end of World War II, the F6F Hellcat had proven itself as more than just an aircraft. It was the embodiment of American industrial capacity, tactical innovation, and pilot training. From Tarawa to the Philippine Sea, it reshaped the balance of air power in the Pacific, turning the tide decisively against Japanese aviation. Legacy, production, and post-war influence. The story of the F6F Hellcat is as much about industrial ingenuity as it is about combat performance. Between October 1942 and November 1945, Grumman produced 12,275 Hellcats from a single factory complex at Bethpage, New York. At peak production in 1944, Grumman rolled out 644 aircraft in a single month, essentially one Hellcat per hour. Every aircraft was assembled from roughly 20,000 parts, sourced from hundreds of subcontractors, coordinated with almost unprecedented precision. This industrial feat ensured that the U.S. Navy could replace losses quickly and maintain a relentless presence across the Pacific. The Hellcat was designed with a focus on durability, ease of use, and mass production. Its robust airframe absorbed hard carrier landings, the controls were responsive even at low speeds, and the cockpit design provided excellent visibility. These factors allowed even inexperienced pilots to operate effectively, minimizing training losses and maximizing combat effectiveness. Beyond production numbers, the F6F's versatility left a lasting mark. Radar-equipped night fighter variants intercepted Japanese bombing raids under cover of darkness, reconnaissance models penetrated enemy territory to gather vital intelligence, and fighter-bomber conversions carried bombs and rockets for devastating ground attacks. Across countless Pacific islands, the Hellcat provided both air superiority and close air support, helping U.S. Marines and Army units destroy entrenched Japanese positions. The Hellcat's combat record remains extraordinary. U.S. Navy and Marine pilots destroyed over 5,200 enemy aircraft in air-to-air combat, while losing only 270 Hellcats. This 19-1 kill ratio, and 13-1 against Zeros specifically, reflected not only the aircraft's technical advantages but also the application of tactical knowledge gained from the Akutan Zero. Pilots flew with confidence, knowing the weaknesses of the enemy fighter and leveraging the Hellcat's superior speed, firepower, and protection. After the war, the rapid pace of aviation development rendered the Hellcat obsolete in frontline service. Jets and advanced propeller fighters replaced it, and by 1954 the last Navy Hellcat was retired. Yet, the aircraft's legacy endured. Surviving F6Fs are preserved in museums worldwide, with several still airworthy, performing at airshows and commemorative events. Each flight recalls the dominance of American naval aviation in the Pacific and the remarkable transformation from the uncertain days of 1942 to the overwhelming victories of 1944 to 45. Equally important is the enduring legacy of the Akutan Zero. Although destroyed in a 1945 accident, its influence was felt in every Hellcat that took to the skies. Test pilot Eddie Sanders' careful analysis revealed vulnerabilities in the Japanese fighter, informing tactical doctrine and pilot training. The combination of American industrial might, innovative design, superior tactics, and detailed intelligence turned the F6F Hellcat into an instrument of near unstoppable force. The broader lesson extends beyond World War II. The capture and study of a single enemy aircraft transformed American naval aviation, proving how intelligence, preparation, and rapid adaptation can decisively influence the outcome of conflicts. The synergy between the Hellcat and the Akutan Zero exemplifies how chance, skill, and foresight intersect to create military advantage. By the end of the war, the F6F Hellcat had not only destroyed more enemy aircraft than any other Allied fighter, but had reshaped the strategic landscape of the Pacific. Pilots remembered it as a fighter that provided not just performance, but knowledge, confidence, and the ability to dominate an enemy that had once seemed invincible. The lessons of the Hellcat and the captured Zero continue to resonate in modern military thinking, a testament to the power of understanding, adaptation, and engineering excellence. Human stories, aces, and pilot experiences. While the F6F Hellcat was an engineering marvel, its true power was realized in the hands of the pilots who flew it. The aircraft's ease of handling and forgiving nature allowed newly trained aviators to step into combat with confidence, a crucial advantage given the rapid expansion of the U.S. Navy during the war. In the early years, inexperienced pilots often fled Japanese Zeros. By 1944-45, that dynamic had reversed. American Hellcat pilots dominated the skies, while Japanese aviators increasingly avoided engagement. The F6F produced more fighter aces than any other Allied aircraft. Between 305 and 307 Navy Hellcat pilots achieved ace status, each with 5 or more confirmed victories. The Navy's top ace, Commander David McCampbell, scored all 34 of his kills flying Hellcats. These victories weren't merely about skill, they reflected the integration of intelligence, tactics, and aircraft performance. Pilots understood exactly how to exploit the Zero's weaknesses, using high-speed slashing attacks, diving from altitude to build energy, and avoiding slow-speed turning fights unless they had a decisive advantage. The psychological impact of this knowledge was profound. Japanese pilots had long been regarded as invincible. The early battles of 1942 reinforced this perception, as the Zero could outmaneuver the majority of American aircraft. But the captured Akutan Zero shattered that myth. Pilots reported feeling a newfound confidence in the skies once they learned how to exploit its vulnerabilities, its fragility, tendency to stall under negative GS, and inability to roll at high speed. They knew they could win if they flew smart, and the F6F provided the tools to execute those tactics effectively. Veterans repeatedly recalled these lessons in post-war reunions. One former Hellcat ace explained, "We believed the Zero was invincible because we had seen it destroy our aircraft. Then we flew the captured plane, and we learned its secrets. Suddenly it wasn't invincible. It was just another aircraft we could beat." The F6F also created a new generation of naval aviators who thrived under the harsh realities of combat. By mid-1944, the United States was producing pilots faster than Japan, and the Hellcat allowed these new aviators to be effective immediately. Conversely, Japanese pilot training had been curtailed by fuel shortages and experienced instructor losses, meaning that by late 1944, many Japanese pilots entered combat with just a fraction of the flight hours their American counterparts had. The result was a deadly spiral. Every engagement cost Japan irreplaceable pilots, while the U.S. continually replaced losses with skilled aviators flying technically superior aircraft. The synergy between the F6F and the Akutan Zero extended beyond individual dogfights. Pilots applied lessons from Sanders' test flights, employing tactical formations like the thatch weave to neutralize the Zero's turning advantage. Mutually supporting pairs of Hellcats created interlocking fields of fire, ensuring that any Japanese aircraft attempting to pursue one pilot would immediately face another Hellcat head-on. This level of tactical discipline, paired with the Hellcat's superior performance, created an almost unstoppable combination in the Pacific. Stories from pilots also highlight the aircraft's resilience. Carrier landings, which could be deadly in lesser aircraft, were survivable in the Hellcat. Many pilots credited the robust landing gear and forgiving flight characteristics with saving their lives on multiple occasions. The aircraft became more than a machine, it was a reliable partner in life-and-death combat situations. Beyond the battlefield, the human connection to the Hellcat remained strong for decades. Veterans' reunions often included stories of bravery, camaraderie, and the critical role the Akutan Zero played in giving them confidence. Pilots described how knowing the Zero's limitations allowed them to survive encounters that might otherwise have been fatal. They shared lessons learned in combat with younger generations, passing down tactics, flight techniques, and the mindset that had enabled American naval aviation to dominate the Pacific. The legacy of the F6F is inseparable from the stories of those who flew it. Every kill, every successful mission, and every narrow escape in the Pacific was a testament not only to the aircraft's design but also to the intelligence that informed its use, the tactics developed from studying the enemy, and the skill of the men who took to the skies. Key battles in the Philippine Sea, Turkey Shoot. By mid-1944, the F6F Hellcat had firmly established itself as the backbone of American carrier aviation. Its first major real test against Japan's best came at the Gilbert Islands on November 23, 1943. Over Tarawa, 30 Japanese Zeros rose to intercept American strike forces. The ensuing dogfights showcased the Hellcat's true capabilities. For every single F6F lost in air-to-air combat, American pilots claimed 30 Japanese fighters destroyed. The lesson was clear: the F6F was everything it was designed to be: fast, resilient, heavily armed, and tactically superior. But the ultimate demonstration of American aerial dominance came less than a year later during the Battle of the Philippine Sea, June 19, 1944. West of the Mariana Islands, Task Force 58, comprising 15 aircraft carriers, 7 large fleet carriers, and 8 light carriers, prepared to face the largest Japanese carrier aviation force since Midway. The Japanese launched wave after wave of aircraft, aiming to strike at the American invasion fleet at Saipan. The battle quickly devolved into what would be immortalized as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Japanese pilots, flying with diminishing experience and inadequate training, faced Hellcats on combat air patrol. The first wave of 69 Japanese aircraft lost 42 before even reaching the fleet. The second wave of 107 aircraft lost 97. In total, Japan launched 370 aircraft over the course of the day. Only 130 returned. American losses numbered between 23 and 30 aircraft, many of which were rescued from the ocean. The strategic implications were catastrophic for Japan. Carrier air groups painstakingly rebuilt after Midway were annihilated. The experienced instructors and aces who trained the current generation were dead. The aircraft reserved for decisive battles were gone. Japanese naval aviation would never recover from this single day's losses. The F6F Hellcat's design, intelligence-informed tactics, and ease of operation allowed even relatively inexperienced pilots to dominate in combat. Its speed, climb rate, firepower, and protection created an overwhelming advantage in dogfights, while its endurance enabled continuous patrols over the fleet. The synergy between aircraft design, tactical doctrine, and pilot training created a lethal combination. Beyond the technical and strategic triumphs, the battle also illustrated the human dimension. American pilots entered combat with confidence because they knew the Zero's weaknesses. They knew how to engage effectively and survive. The psychological edge gained from intelligence, combined with industrial might, allowed American carrier groups to operate with near impunity. Japanese pilots increasingly avoided direct engagement, a striking reversal from 1942 when the Zeros had dominated the skies. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot marked a turning point in the Pacific War. It demonstrated the full potential of the F6F Hellcat, the cumulative impact of intelligence from the captured Akutan Zero, and the effectiveness of American training and tactical innovation. By the end of the engagement, the balance of power in the Pacific had shifted irreversibly in favor of the United States. Variants, special missions, and legacy. The F6F Hellcat was not just a standard fighter, it was a versatile platform that adapted to every challenge the Pacific theater presented. Its design allowed for specialized variants, each tailored to meet unique tactical demands. The F6F-3N and later F6F-5 and Night Fighter variants were equipped with radar pods mounted on the starboard wing. These night fighters intercepted Japanese bombing raids that previously struck under cover of darkness. The trade-off was a slight reduction in speed, but the added capability saved countless lives and neutralized a threat that had previously operated with impunity. Reconnaissance missions were another arena where the Hellcat proved indispensable. The F6F-3P and F6F-5P variants replaced guns with cameras, enabling deep penetration into enemy territory. Pilots could photograph Japanese positions, shipping, and infrastructure and return without engaging in combat. Speed and range made the F6F ideal for these high-risk operations, providing intelligence that could be acted upon immediately. The versatility of the Hellcat extended to ground attack roles as well. Later F6F variants were outfitted to carry 2,000-pound bombs on a centerline rack and rockets under the wings, transforming the fighter into a highly effective fighter-bomber. These aircraft provided precise close-air support for Marines and Army units during island campaigns, destroying bunkers, artillery positions, and concentrations of enemy troops. In many cases, Hellcats achieved results that artillery alone could not. By the end of World War II, the F6F Hellcat's combat record was unmatched. Navy and Marine Corps pilots flying F6Fs destroyed 5,163 enemy aircraft in Pacific air-to-air combat, with an additional 60 victories in other theaters, bringing the total to 5,223. Only 270 F6Fs were lost in air-to-air combat, giving the aircraft a phenomenal 19-to-1 kill-to-loss ratio. Against Japanese Zeros specifically, the ratio was 13-to-1. These numbers reflected not only the aircraft's technical superiority but also the integration of intelligence, tactical doctrine, and pilot training. The Hellcat also produced more fighter aces than any other Allied aircraft. Between 305 and 307 Navy Hellcat pilots achieved ace status, with the Navy's top ace, Commander David McCampbell, scoring all 34 of his victories in an F6F. The aircraft's dominance even had psychological effects. Late in the war, Japanese pilots increasingly avoided combat, recognizing that engaging F6Fs was likely to be fatal. Even after World War II, the F6F Hellcat left a lasting legacy. While rapidly phased out of frontline service by jets and more modern propeller fighters, many Hellcats continued in reserve squadrons into the early 1950s. Others were converted into target drones or scrapped. Museums across the United States preserve F6Fs, many restored to flying condition, allowing airshow audiences to witness the roar of these legendary fighters. Approximately 70 F6Fs survive today, with 7 still airworthy in the United States. The legacy of the Hellcat is inseparable from the intelligence gained from the Akutan Zero. That single captured aircraft, tested and analyzed, revealed weaknesses that informed F6F tactics and pilot training. Eddie Sanders' test flights transformed abstract data into practical combat knowledge, allowing pilots to exploit enemy vulnerabilities. Together, the Hellcat and the Akutan Zero created a synergy that turned American naval aviation from underdog in 1942 to uncontested dominance by mid-1944. The story of the F6F Hellcat cannot be fully told without the voices of the men who flew it. Thousands of American pilots, many of them young and freshly trained, entered the Pacific War facing seasoned Japanese aviators flying the seemingly invincible Zero. At first, fear was constant. Early encounters with the Zero in 1942 left American squadrons battered and cautious. But the arrival of the Akutan Zero and a careful analysis by Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders transformed this dynamic. Pilots learned to exploit weaknesses that had previously been invisible. Veterans recount in reunions and memoirs how this knowledge changed everything. One pilot described the moment he realized the Zero could not roll effectively at high speed. Another recalled practicing dive attacks and high-speed slashing passes, techniques that Sanders had identified as decisive during testing. They understood that the F6F's strength was not only in its speed, firepower, and ruggedness, but in the strategic doctrine that paired these advantages with knowledge of the enemy. In combat, confidence mattered as much as aircraft performance. Pilots knew the Zero could be beaten. They knew the rules of engagement, and could act decisively, transforming fear into lethal efficiency. The synergy between intelligence, engineering, and training became evident in every engagement. By mid-1944, American carriers bristled with Hellcats, each squadron executing refined tactics that neutralized the Japanese turning advantage. Speed, altitude, and firepower were the tools, but knowledge was the weapon that allowed inexperienced pilots to outperform the veterans of the Japanese fleet. The 19-to-1 kill ratio was more than statistics. It was a reflection of planning, preparation, and understanding. Each engagement reinforced the lessons, and American pilots became increasingly skilled at dictating combat on their terms. The impact of the Akutan Zero extended far beyond the cockpit. It influenced industrial planning, design refinements, and pilot instruction. Variants of the F6F were developed to meet evolving tactical needs: night fighters with radar pods, reconnaissance planes replacing guns with cameras, fighter bombers equipped with rockets and bombs for close air support. Every adaptation was guided by the principle that knowledge of the enemy, coupled with industrial and technological superiority, could decisively shape the battlefield. Even as the war drew to a close, the F6F Hellcat continued to prove its dominance. Battles across the Pacific, from Leyte Gulf to Okinawa, saw Hellcats providing air superiority, close support, and reconnaissance with unmatched efficiency. Japanese pilots increasingly avoided direct engagements, recognizing the overwhelming advantage of the American aircraft and doctrine. Where once the Zero had ruled the skies, by 1945, the Hellcat commanded them. After the war, the Hellcat transitioned quickly out of frontline service, replaced by jets and newer designs. Yet its legacy endured in museums, in air shows, and in the collective memory of naval aviation. The lessons of intelligence, tactical adaptation, and industrial execution remained as relevant to future conflicts as they had been in the Pacific. Pilots who flew the F6F often credited the Akutan Zero with saving lives, shaping tactics, and enabling American naval dominance. Ultimately, the story of the Akutan Zero and the F6F Hellcat is a testament to the convergence of chance, skill, and preparation. A single captured aircraft, carefully analyzed, provided the key insights needed to transform an entire fleet's approach to air combat. An aircraft designed to be robust, fast, and effective became a weapon of unprecedented lethality when paired with precise tactical doctrine and the resolve of American pilots. From fear and uncertainty in 1942 to unchallenged dominance by 1944, the Hellcat's journey reflects the broader narrative of World War II. Intelligence and innovation, matched with industrial might and human courage, can decisively alter the course of history. Even decades later, the echoes of those victories remain. Survivors recall the lessons learned, historians study the tactics perfected, and airshows bring the aircraft to life for new generations. The Akutan Zero, though physically lost to an accident in 1945, lives on in these stories. A silent witness to a pivotal moment when understanding overcame myth, and knowledge became power. It reminds us that in warfare, as in life, insight can be as decisive as action, and preparation, combined with opportunity, can create outcomes far beyond what raw force alone can achieve.